Hi, it's Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today we're joined by one of our mentors, Asha Gupta, from a product manager at Etsy, and she's going to lead a talk on product principles. But before we really get into it, I want to just briefly describe the format to everyone. Those who are new who are joining us in the room today, as well as those who are joining the live stream. That's really open to everyone else on the internet. Asha will be leading us through a talk, and as you have questions, you can post it to the Google moderator that I've made available for this talk. And as the questions come in, I'll be jumping in from time to time, interrupting Asha, so we get all your questions answered. So everyone can be involved, whether you're in the room or on the wider internet, to join in. So hey guys, at the bottom, wave hi, say hello. Do that. There we go. Yay, we're all live. That's what we do. We try to be alive in this Google Hangout. So what I'm going to just do quickly is I'm going to just quickly go around the room, do some introductions, and so I'm going to start with Wes.
Unmute myself. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my name is Wes Tomlinson. I'm currently a junior product manager at a digital media distribution company called The Orchard, and I'm a mentee in the product manager mentor group.
Excellent. And apparently experiencing an earthquake over there right now, so that was exciting. Let's go to the Nick. Nick?
Nick, I think you're muted.
Well, I'm going to skip Nick. Nick is a great guy. Look, he smiles. He waves hi. There we go. We'll learn more about Nick later as he looks for his mute button. I'm going to jump over to Mike. Mike, introduce yourself.
Can you hear me? Mike Claiborne, product manager, ed tech, former software developer, live in the New York City area, and excited for tonight's talk.
Excellent. Mikal?
Hi, Michal Nodell. I live in Detroit. I'm a product manager and recently started a product development consulting group in the Motor City.
Excellent. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica. I work for a medical technology company in NYC on the dev team, and previously did product and looking to get back into a more product-focused role.
Excellent. Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Solomon. I host the Global Product Management Talk, talking to experts and thought leaders and practitioners, and I founded the Startup Product Movement for Product Excellence. We have a conference, we have 18 communities worldwide, and we bring people together to talk about what it takes to achieve product excellence. Of course, the foundation is excellent product management.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Christina?
Hi everyone, I'm Christina. I live in New York, and I'm a project manager at an ed tech company out in Brooklyn.
Wow, nice and short and to the point. All right, cool. And to Asha.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm Asha. I'm currently a PM at a product manager at Etsy, and I am managing our apps. So I manage the iPhone, iPad, and Android apps. And before that, I worked at a few startups. Yeah, that's me.
Excellent, excellent. So great. So we're going to get going in just a second. Just as a quick reminder, as you have questions, whether you're in the room or visiting us through the productmentor.com/live, Just post your questions to Google Moderator, and as they come up, I'm more than happy to pass them on to Asha to get all of your questions answered and then some. And once again, I am Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and I'll be moderating tonight, this afternoon, this evening, whichever you want to call it. And with that said, let me hand it over to Asha to lead her talk on product principles.
Cool, great. So let me just share my screen with you. Great, so everyone can see the presentation?
Yep, we're all set to go.
Okay, great. So I want to talk about product principles, and I think it's a great talk to kick off the TPM 8 session. Really, I think they're the foundation of any great product. I think it's really the difference between a good product and a great product is when you have very clear, crisp product principles. And as I was just mentioning in the intro, I've worked at kind of a mixture of companies, companies that are really young. So I've been the first employee at a startup. Companies like kind of still young, but a little bit more mature, like I worked at Venmo. And now I'm at Etsy, and we're like 500 people. So kind of seen the gamut of companies. And before that, I was in strategy consulting, so I worked with a lot of like Fortune 500 types of companies. Kind of seen the gamut of companies, and I think that really product principles are the difference between good and great. So I want to explain to you what do I mean by product principles, what are some examples of companies that have really strong product principles, and also I'm going through a process right now at Etsy to form these product principles, so I want to walk you through that process. Cool, so every company has a mission statement, right? And these mission statements are usually something that employees at the company, they can spout them off, like they know them by heart, right? And even people like, I think most people would know Google's mission statement, organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, right? And so mission statements are usually very lofty, ambitious, and they're typically something that everyone at the company can recite. But as PMs, I think a lot of people talk about what are all the different roles of PMs, and there's a lot of different opinions on this, but I think really the primary thing that we have to do as PMs is we need to translate that mission statement into product. So we're always making decisions, right, as PMs. We're making decisions about UI, we're making decisions about little things like copy, we're making decisions about UX, obviously, and then we're making decisions about prioritization, like what are the things we should build, what are the things we shouldn't build. We're responsible at the end of the day for making all these decisions. And in those decisions, it's our responsibility to advance the mission, right? So if you really, so one way of thinking about product is it's the purest expression of a mission statement, really. Like it's the way that your users are going to interact, and they're going to understand the mission, and that mission will be fulfilled. So really, when we think about what are we supposed to do as PMs, we're supposed to translate the mission statement into product. So everyone knows the mission statement, and our job is to translate it. But that's not easy to do by any means, right? So mission statements kind of live, can't see my face, but they live way up in the lofty area, and they're quite ambitious, and they're more high level. And product is more in the applied, in the world that people actually use, right? So going from mission statement to product is tough. Just to give an example, so at Etsy, the mission statement is to reimagine commerce in ways that build a fulfilling and lasting, a more fulfilling and lasting world. And so if I'm a PM there, I'm looking at that mission statement. And the feature that I'm working on right now is a new review system for Etsy items, for example. How do I translate that? Like, how do I make decisions about the review system? I'm thinking about how we do the star interaction. Is it a drop-down menu, or is it like 5 stars that are clickable? Or I'm thinking about kind of UI. So how do I go from that mission statement? How do I manifest it in the product? Right? That's tough. That's tough as a product manager. And moreover, different product managers are going to have different points of view on that. They're going to go, like the translation from mission to product, if it's not clear, people are going to make different decisions, and then your product is just going to be inconsistent. And then you're going to have a whole other set of issues. So really, what I propose is that product principles are the way that you make that translation from mission statement to product. So product principles are these clear set of rules that are actionable, and they can help PMs make decisions. And they're really codifying that translation so that all PMs make consistent decisions. So really the foundation for product principles is that it helps PMs do that translation. So that's kind of the preamble of what product principles help you do. But let's dive into a few examples, because I think really the best way to talk about this stuff is to look at products that have good product vision and good product principles. So let's go through some examples now. And let's start with Instagram, because everyone knows Instagram and everyone, well, I don't know if everyone loves it, but I love it. And I think that especially early on, they did a great job of having very clear product principles. Okay, so Instagram, I was actually kind of fortunate in that I heard Kevin talk. This was probably, they weren't big yet, but they, if you guys don't know, Stanford does something called ETL, which is Entrepreneurship Thought Leadership Talks, and they have a host of amazing guests that go through that, and they're all the lectures are available online. You should definitely check them out. Stanford ETL. But so Kevin was one of the people who spoke, and he talked. There were still, I think, less than like 3 million users at that time, and so he talked about very early on. They decided that they were going to focus on 3 things. And it's really a version of product principles. These were the 3 things that they were going to ensure that their product did. So Instagram product principles. The first thing was make every picture beautiful. And it's true, right? Like you can take a picture of a wood floor, or you can take a picture of like just a blue sky, or even like dirty shoes or something, and you can add a filter and it can look awesome. And they did a great job of doing that, and they made people share more because every picture is beautiful with all of their filters. So make every picture beautiful was one of their guiding forces. The second thing was make it super fast to upload a photo. So this is generally slow, and I think it's obviously gotten better. But they did things like when a user actually uploaded a photo, they would, on the client side, so to the user it would look like it was totally uploaded because they would show it in the client, but then they would still be processing in the back end. So they'd still be like processing and sending it to the server, but it would appear like it uploaded really fast. And I think they also even showed like a more grainy version of it, and then improved that after. So this was another thing, was like try to make uploading every photo super fast. And then the last thing was to share all, to allow when you share to this one thing, when you share to Instagram, it actually shares to all places. It shares to Twitter, you can share to Facebook, and it shares to all people at once because people are coming to Instagram. And this was really, I don't know how many of you guys use Hipstamatic, but basically Hipstamatic was really similar to Instagram in that it had beautiful filters. I don't know about the fast part, but it did definitely have filters, but they weren't thinking about sharing at all. And so Instagram was saying that is one of our product principles. Like we want to make sure that there's a notion of sharing in everything that we do. So thinking about if you're a PM, say you're a PM at early Instagram, right? And these are your 3 product principles that you live by. So it would make sense for you to have your team keep iterating on filters. So thinking about the first product principle, make every picture beautiful. It would make sense for your team to keep iterating on your filters, even if it meant, so actually let me rephrase it a bit differently. Okay, so say you're a PM and you're faced with a decision. Should you make yet another filter that isn't kind of expressed here? Or should you improve the homepage and make desktop version much better? So should I work on filters, or should I like improve our landing page? And early on in Instagram, I don't know how many of you were using Instagram, but at the very beginning, they didn't have a desktop experience at all, and their homepage was basically just like go download the app, right? So they made a decision to continue developing their filters because that was part of their product principles. And so if you have that clear product principle of make every picture beautiful, you're going to say, yeah, like to your engineering team, you're going to say, yeah, spend another month making these filters even better. That makes sense because we know exactly what we're going for, and we're going for making every picture beautiful. So Instagram, I think, is a really good example of clear product principles and how they were able to like skyrocket growth after that. So another example I want to talk about is Venmo. This one, I worked at Venmo when there were 6 people. And for those of you who don't know, Venmo is basically a mobile payments platform. It's similar to it's similar to PayPal, but in many ways, like it's much more social. But the basic use case is paying back your friends. And so Venmo early on was their product principles were, make it super easy. They were going after the use case of not having to send a check into your, like not having to send a check to your landlord, and not having to split the, like if you have roommates, not having to like have all these expenses that you calculate back and forth just at the end of the month or something. They just basically in the moment be able to pay back your friends. So make payment super fast and super easy. Well, I kind of, oh yeah, and then the next thing was make it fun. So there are so many people, and arguably still today, there's so many different companies that are going after the mobile payments, right? Like that was a super hot thing. Google Wallet was in there. There's tons of startups. Obviously, PayPal was there. Facebook was thinking about it for a while. So there are lots of people, there are lots of companies that were trying to get at this. I mean, Square, obviously. But what Venmo was trying to do was they were trying to make it fun. They're actually trying to redefine what it means to pay someone, and to actually to have that be a form of expression, and to have that be a form of gratitude, and something that people celebrate rather than something that's like kind of socially awkward and something that you don't want to think about. So fun was a really, it sounds like sort of a weak word, but actually it was a really, really important product principle for Venmo. And then the last thing was, as Venmo was an early player in this space, and because they weren't a reputable player, no one had heard of them before, they needed to be trustworthy, right? Like if someone's downloading this thing that they've never heard of and they're going to set it up with their bank account, like that's scary stuff. So easy, fun, trustworthy. And so just thinking about the fun product principle, I'm comparing side by side here home screens of, I haven't looked at the latest PayPal. I think that they've geared more towards social. But early on, home screen with PayPal versus Venmo, and like right away you notice that one has people and faces, right? Like one feels way more social and fun, really. The other one kind of feels like an accounting software or something. And so Venmo feels more fun. Like from the home screen, like that's what you see, and even on their website today, this is a thing that you see on their homepage. Is just the feed. And if you look at kind of the comments, like what people are saying, there's some people that say, oh yeah, Colby charged Evan for cable. There's some kind of utilitarian comments. But then there's also like all of the things and more food and oops. And so people are like, they manage, because fun was always a part of their product principle, they led by example by having comments that were, they're funny. Like there's some, like people feel, it's not like people are totally just stating, it's not totally bland comments. Like there's definitely people who write things that are more interesting and fun and enjoyable, and a lot of that was because they designed around fun. And arguably, like, that's why Venmo has succeeded, right? Is because people talk about things that they love and they're more enjoyable. And the other thing I want to touch on here is, so coming back, the other principle was trustworthy. So when I was working at Venmo, the big question was what should be. We were redesigning the app, and the big question was what should be on the home screen. So before this feed made the home screen, there was basically just 4 buttons. And basically, easy was winning because it was super easy to pay. There was just a big button that said pay and a big button that said charge. And so easy was the one, is kind of the product principle that was winning. But it wasn't, if you had just downloaded that app, it wasn't obvious that there were a lot of users that were already on Venmo. And so you didn't get a sense of trust. And so the decision was made to move towards a feed, not only because it has a sense of fun, but also because if you're someone who doesn't know Venmo and you download it and you see all of these people who, yeah, you don't really care about them. Like, I don't care about Sophie's Zed. You don't care about these people, but it gives you a sense that, oh, this thing is legit. Like, okay, if there's lots of people using it, and especially, this is 9 minutes ago, look how many people have made a payment. Like, this activity is frequently happening, it's real. So the activity feed on the home screen was also a move to establish Venmo as a trustworthy app. So that's a little bit of the story of Venmo. So I just want to check, are there any questions? I'm guessing no comments.
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Keep going. I'll jump in as soon as we got them.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. So Customer IO. So this is a company that I worked at after Venmo. I was the first employee at this company, and I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it, but basically what Customer IO does is it's basically MailChimp plus Google Analytics. And what that means is it makes it super easy for you to send emails based on user behavior. So Customer IO it's super useful. It tracks what users are doing on your site, and then it allows you to set up kind of sophisticated rules-based emails. So you could say, send an email to all users if they have done X and not Y. Like if a user is logged in, but then 30 days later they didn't log in again, send them an email. So that's basically what Customer IO does in a nutshell, is rule-based emails. So when I first started there, I was eager to come up with product principles. And so this is what we came up with. So the first thing was, because we're dealing with email, and obviously email is the face of people's company, right? Like, it's a lot of it is the way that your users will first interact with you is through emails, and then they'll come to your site. And so we needed to make sure that people trusted Customer IO, and that it was really, really hard for our users to make mistakes in our service. Our reputation would just have been terrible, right? If it was easy to make mistakes and you could make mistakes often, and then our clients were basically sending their users wrong emails, we would lose all of our business. So the first thing was we needed to make it super hard to make mistakes. And for a long time, this was really the only product principle that we lived by. It was all about trying to go through our entire app and make it really hard to make mistakes. So that was the first thing. The second thing we wanted to do was make our users feel like they have superpowers. So it's kind of a complicated thing. So typically the people that are in this role that were using Customer IO were either marketers who didn't write code, but they had great ideas for emails. So they didn't write code, they had great ideas for emails, and finally they can go into something, and the rules in Customer IO all look like plain English. They're like, if someone has done X and not Y, it all just reads like a sentence. So for marketers, it's really easy, and we wanted to make them feel like they've gained this superpower and that our service is really important for them. And then the third thing, was to make our users' success easy to share. And this was a concept of how can we grow? how can we make it obvious? How can we make it that when someone's open rates go up, they celebrate that moment and they share it with others, so that they look good to their boss, but also so they share it with their friends or their peers rather, and then we're getting more business in. So those are sort of the product principles that we live by at Customer.io. And I'm gonna just talk about I'm gonna talk about the first one, make it hard to make mistakes.
Actually, before you jump into that, Asha, we just had a whole bunch of questions come in.
Yeah.
So the first one is from someone named Mike. How do product principles fit in with strategy and long-term roadmaps?
Yeah.
And if you could toggle back to your video so we can see you. There's going to be a couple of questions I've got for you.
Okay, cool. Hey, so I think they should really inform. The question was, how do product principles tie into long-term roadmaps? And I think they should really be the seed, and they should inform what you're doing. Think of it like a more actionable version of your mission statement. So if you have your long-term roadmap is, so taking Etsy as an example, to reimagine commerce and in a more fulfilling and lasting way. A product principle, which we still are coming up with our product principles, but our product principle may be to emphasize the relationship between buyers and sellers. So say that's a product principle. Emphasize the relationship between buyers and sellers. So with our roadmap, that would be used to inform what we actually work on, right? So we would work on having craft fairs where buyers and sellers meet, right? And where that interaction is strengthened. So I think that really the product principles should help inform the roadmap.
Okay, cool. I got another question. This one from Spencer. He marked it for later, but I'll ask you now.
Okay.
It's a little bit off topic, but I'll throw it at you this way.
Okay.
Regarding thoughts, he's kind of curious to hear about your thoughts on product management in a company's software development lifecycle. It's a long question, so I'm happy to restate it. So he wants your thoughts on product management in a company's software development lifecycle, and how product management is different at companies employing different methodologies. Any comments on favorite tools, knowledge management, wireframing, product management, requirements gathering, etc. I can break that down for you.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like that question. Basically, I think this feels a bit off topic, but I'm happy to answer it. I think that the product role and the tools that you use and what you're responsible for highly differs between company to company, and it's hard to answer in one consistent way. The companies that I've worked at, it's been like a very different role. Sometimes you have companies that only hire product engineers, and those product engineers are the ones making decisions. Sometimes you have companies where design, it's very like an aesthetic kind of design-led company, and someone who does the graphic design is actually the one who's doing the wireframes, and they're actually the ones who are making kind of more of the product strategy decisions. And then you have a larger company like Etsy, for example, where there is a specific product manager role, and you're working with other PMs and kind of the CEO and the exec team to come up with a product strategy. So I really feel like that is so highly variable. I'm happy, whoever asked that question, you can email me and with more questions, and we can break that question down.
Actually, Spencer, if you want to do some follow-up questions, feel free. I think he's already got some follow-up questions in here. But I guess to Spencer's question, is there like one correct way to be doing this with software development, or
like doing this meaning coming up with
product management?
Product principles?
Yeah.
Product principles or product management?
Let's go with both.
Is there one correct way to do product management? I just can't prescribe a way, because it differs so much based on your team and what talents you have in your team, and you kind of have to fill in the gaps. Yeah, if you have really strong designers and product-focused engineers, then you need to listen to them and figure out like how you can move things forward. If you don't have that, then you need to come up with a product strategy. Yeah, it's highly varied. Product principles, coming up with those, I'm going to talk about that a bit later in my presentation.
Excellent, excellent. So we have next question is from Irfan in the room, so I'm going to throw over to him to ask his question.
Sorry, I was just eating. So, I love the idea of product principles, but what I was really kind of confused at, and maybe this is through my experience, is that who really owns the product principles? I feel like it should be, the product team, but from my experience, I've seen the business team kind of wants to like edge their way into it. So, have you had any experience with that? Should it be a collaboration? The reason why I ask is because this has a huge impact on the roadmap. If we say something like the product has to be easy, and that's a product principle, then you sort of need to orient your roadmap onto that, which could conflict with the business priorities. So,
totally.
What happened?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it really depends on how much leadership buy-in you have into product, and how much your CEO and basically the leadership exec care about product. I think companies that really care about product think about what are our product goals and product vision first, and then what are the ways that we're going to measure success against that, and those become kind of the metrics that you're measuring, rather than, oh, we want to improve conversion rate. That's our goal for this year, is just to improve conversion rate, and then not having a method of how you're going to do that. They don't have a strong, so it kind of depends on, does a senior team believe in, have a strong product vision, or is it more, and I think this happens in a lot of companies, or is it more like they have a strong business metric goals? And when you have strong business metric goals, and that's really what's driving the company, I do think it's hard to step in with this product idea of leadership. I think it's challenging. You need to have a CPO, Chief Product Officer, or you need to have people who care about product at the senior level. If you're in a situation where business metrics are driving decisions, I think it's kind of, and quite frankly, this is what's happening at Etsy. So I was going to talk about this a bit later, but basically that's tough, right? Like when your roadmap is determined simply by things like we need to improve conversion rate. That's a tough place to be as a product person, because you have product goals that may or may not align with conversion rate, but they do align with other important things like interaction between people or something, buyers and sellers, for example. So in a situation where you are really more of a business, where the business is really driving the roadmap, I think you need to, like what we're doing at Etsy right now is the PMs have all come together, and we've talked about all the different, we're basically coming up with product principles and sharing those with the CEO. I'm actually having a meeting tomorrow with the CEO, so this is quite timely, but basically trying to get more of the product perspective at the exec level. So it's not a straightforward answer, because I think it is tough. It's tough if you don't have a Steve Jobs, or basically, and I hate to just throw out that example because there's tons of people who are product thinkers. It wasn't just Steve Jobs. Like Airbnb, take Airbnb for example, right? Like their CEO was a designer, and then they have a chief product officer, I believe, as well. And even their CTO was very much a product thinker. And so it depends what your leadership is like. That's what my best answer is. Great,
cool. We have another question from someone named Arctip, I think, if I'm saying it correctly. And Arctip's question is, have you seen product principles change through the life of a product or in response to a changing market?
That's a really good question. I haven't seen that, but I could imagine that they would. I mean, Airbnb in a way, so they were, early on it was obviously very much about, and even today it's still very much about rental space, like hosting. but they are trying to get more into just general communities, like making sustainable communities, and so they have the they have a guide of things that you can do as a visitor to a new area. And I know they're working with different cities. I think like Portland is the first city, but they're working with different cities to basically strengthen like aspects of community. So I don't know any examples. I haven't seen any of those firsthand. If you're curious, Airbnb, I would research like Airbnb and to see like what transitions they're going through, because it feels like they're expanding their mission and their product goals. That's a really good question, though. And I think it makes sense that companies are going to evolve and change those things.
Cool. And I'm going to hand over to Cindy for the next question, because she's got a question for you. Cindy?
Hey, Cindy, I think you're muted.
Cindy, you're muted.
All right, hold on.
Yeah, we can hear you now. And then we can't again. I'm going to ask Cindy's question for her, because it seems like we might be having some technical problems. The internet's against her today. So Cindy's question is, how are product principles distinct from product mission or product benefits?
Nomenclature? I don't really know. I don't know if they are distinct. I don't know exactly what we mean by product benefits, and I'm forgetting everything that you said is. We can name it whatever we want. It's basically like a clear articulation of what we're trying to do with the product.
Okay. Cool. And I think for the moment we've exhausted all the questions. I think there's a few questions I'll be coming to a little bit later that some people have been asking. But again, if you have any questions throughout this live stream, just post them up to the Google Moderator room, which is available at theproductmentor.com/live. And as the new questions come in, I will be passing them on to Asha. But with that said, let me hand it back to you, Asha, to continue your talk.
Okay. 1 second here. Cool. So I was just talking about customer I/O, and we were talking about product principles. And remember, really, the real important takeaway is they're an email company, and I want to show some ways in the product that we subscribe to this first principle of making it hard to make mistakes. So helping users not fail, basically. So the first thing we did was when you set up emails in customer I/O, you could have different environments. And so you could have a production environment, which would go to real people. So it would actually go to whichever users follow those rules. But we also, in order to make it hard to make mistakes, we created a development environment. And so in this case, you could try out the rules and make sure those things were working, but it would only go to users in your dev environment. And you can also make it so that all emails just go to one person. So we did this. We allowed emails to have different states. So they could be automatic, which is kind of the final state. But we basically, initially we had an off state and an automatic state. We didn't have anything in between. And then, trying to make it hard to make mistakes, we said, okay, well, we need to have some other way for people to test things. So why don't we make a confirm first state, which just meant that if someone met all the conditions for an email, we would draft it, and then you could actually see that it was drafted, and you could send it or choose not to send it. And this is really minor, but just things like scary things, like having lots of confirmation upon scary things. So this is where you are deleting an environment. And so this is kind of stolen from GitHub, but basically before you delete, we want to make sure that you really intend to do this. So you have to type in the name of the environment, and then you click confirm delete. So those are some examples of how we made it hard to make mistakes.
Before you jump into Oscar, I've got some more questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to read you a question from Spencer. Spencer asks, what are some examples of product principles that steered a product or a company wrong? What sorts of things should be left out of product principles? Spencer really likes to pile a lot of the questions together. Let me ask you them one at a time.
Okay.
So what are some examples of product principles that steered a product or a company wrong?
I don't know any of those off the top of my head. It's kind of hard. It's hard to know those because those aren't things that product principles aren't really public. I would have had to experience them myself. I would say that product principle, like using my best judgment, I would say that if you're not basing product principles on user research and data and a really deep understanding of like the environment in which your product lives, then if you're kind of just if Venmo thought of making stuff easy and fun because they were thinking about like what is the world, what is the state of affairs today, and so that's how they came up with those. If you're totally thinking in isolation and you don't have a lot of data, I'm assuming that it'd be hard to come up with good product principles.
Okay. Let me ask this part 2 of the question. What sorts of things should be left out of product principles?
I think business, or not business, but generally like, I was going to say generally metrics, like you're going to increase something by 10% or you're going to have growth, like gain this many more users, because that's not the how you're going to do something. That's really like the end result that you're going for. Product principles should be the how. They should be like, how are you going to get to that thing? How are you going to get to that growth number? So just thinking about it, I would not, if you're saying we're going to do something by 10%, that's probably the wrong like way to think about product principles.
Okay. Do you have any other formal guidelines that you would share on defining product principles?
Yeah, I do. That's next up.
Okay, cool. So Spencer, Asha's going to get to that in just a moment. So we'll answer that question in a little bit. I just had a question come in from Kareem from Los Angeles. Let's see, I haven't read the question yet, so who knows what I'm going to read. So it's my understanding that programming knowledge is not necessary, but it's helpful in being a great product manager. Okay, so this one's a little bit off topic. So it's my understanding that programming knowledge is not necessary, but can be helpful in being a great product manager. In your mind, how crucial is it for a product manager to have deep programming knowledge, and is it company dependent?
Yeah, I would say you can email me this question later, because it does, but I will answer it right now quickly, but if you want more details, email me. It's highly dependent based on what the team makeup is. Generally, if you're working in technology, you need to understand how technology works. Doesn't mean you need to it doesn't mean you need to be an expert programmer, but you need to understand how technology works, meaning the stack. And the more programming you know, the better you're going to be at your job, both because you're able to communicate with engineers, they're going to respect you, but also because you can go in. You're not going to be dependent on your engineers for everything, and you can go in and make changes. So if you're asking this question because you're trying to debate of whether you should spend some time programming or not, and I would say yes, spend at least some time like making sure that you understand how technology works, and yeah.
Cool. And the next question is, have you ever seen a team make use of product principles for large features? If so, what teams did it well?
Yeah, so like I think Venmo was a really good example of, I mean, the product was basically based on those 3 things, and that kind of bled into every part of Instagram as well, right? Like you can interacting with the product in early Instagram, you'd see, oh yeah, their website is not, like there's nothing here. It was kind of disappointing. But their app was awesome, and they're always coming out with better filters. So I would say like those are 2 good examples. Oscar is another one that I can jump into.
And we've got one more question. I'm gonna try handing over to Cindy quickly, see if the internet is in her favor right now. And Cindy, if you want to try asking your question again, otherwise I'll just jump right in and ask it.
I'm not hearing her. Are you guys hearing her?
No. I see her mouth moving. This is exciting. Sorry, Cindy, we can't hear. We're not hearing you. I saw you unmuted yourself, which was good. But your computer's angry at you, or the internet is angry at you right now. That's okay. We love you. I'll ask. Let me read your questions that Asha can speak to it. So Cindy's question is: product principles seem to define feature requirements for product development. Product benefits would be the value to the end user from the customer perspective. Product mission equals intention of the product in the market. So I don't think it's so much of a question. I guess to you, Asha, does that sound about right, the distinction? Is that kind of how you're thinking about it, speaking to that distinction that Cindy was highlighting there?
Okay, I'm going to have to repeat to make sure I understand. So product mission and mission sound the same?
Here, let me reread it for you. So Cindy was saying product mission equals the intention of the product in the market. Product benefits would be the value to the end user from the customer perspective. And product principles seem to define feature requirements for product development.
I don't know. I tend to not look at it so strictly, like whether it's requirements. Those requirements could be things that you want your users to feel and experience, so they could be related to user benefits. Like if you look at, I mean, the customer I/O principles were about, make the users feel like they have superpowers, make it really hard to make mistakes. Those were our goals through the product. Venmo was make it easy, fun, and fast, which is related to the benefit. Those are benefits, but they're also kind of requirements in that they are the goals of the company. They're of the product, so the product should be driving towards those things. I tend to not really. I guess when you're making feature requirements that aren't benefits to users, like why are you making those, right? So like what feature requirements are not benefits to users, I guess, would be.
Yeah, very good, very good. Cool. So there's more questions, but I'm going to keep those in the backlog for now and let you continue with Oscar.
Okay, cool. I was going to do that. Let me go here. Oh. Okay, so I guess this is already in the build. So anyway, Oscar.
Asha, we still see you. We're not seeing the slide yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Good. Okay. So Oscar, for those of you who live in New York, you might have noticed a lot of Oscar ads on the subways lately. But basically, it is a tech company that's trying to market directly to consumer. It's to market health insurance. They're a health insurance company. They're trying to market directly to consumers and make it super easy to buy health insurance. So unfortunately, the build kind of gave away. I mean, now you see all the product principles. But basically, they're trying to make things very simple. Like health insurance is like notoriously scary and complicated. So they're trying to cut that all down, make it simple. They're trying to make it friendly, and this is something if you've seen the ads in New York, you'll notice that they have these like huge kind of stuffed, that look like almost stuffed animal characters on subway ads, and they're friendly, fun colors. So they're trying to make health insurance seem friendly, which right now I think everyone would agree that it really does not feel friendly. And the final thing that kind of coincides with simple is smart. And so I've chatted with the head of product at Oscar, and he was talking about these were the product principles that we're trying to drive. And so by smart, Smart means that we will do the work for you, right? We'll do all those complicated calculations to figure out what is the best insurance plan for you. So just walking through a few examples, like, this is what typically a receipt will look like, right? When you get a health insurance receipt, it'll look something like this. It has all of this information about every single line item of the payment, bill number, bill reflects payment, like all these dates, member ID, which is probably useful. Basically a lot of stuff. And so they went from this receipt to this receipt, where it was, what is the primary thing people care about? It's what I owe. So you owe, even here, it does say please pay this amount, but it's hard to even see like what the number is and what I'm supposed to do. Here it's like very clear, right? And they're using the concept of progressive disclosure, right? So if you want to know more, you can see back for more details. I'm assuming this is like a paper copy. But basically, and there at the top there was the person's address and the member ID, which it seemed to be real info, so I hit it. But basically, make it really, they've distilled this down to the one pure thing, so make it simple. The next example is like, this is how you get a quote on Aetna. Look how much text there is here, all these different options, or all these different form fields to fill out. Dependents are, you don't know how often people will have dependents, but they're including all of them here. There's just a lot of stuff going on this page. And you'll notice at the top, this is step 1 of 4. So there's presumably 4 more pages of something like this. And they haven't even filled out something they might know, or some things that what they could do is what do we know by default? Like, what is the primary things that people, the primary demographic that usually fills this out, and what they could do that, they could pre-fill that for us, but they're not doing that. And so this is what that same experience, getting a quote, looks like on Oscar. And this is coming back to simple and smart, right? So they are being smart in that they're thinking about who's the primary person who's buying health insurance in New York City. It's probably someone who doesn't have any kids, they're single, they're making around 50K, they just threw in a zip code, maybe they're doing geo-based to get the zip code. But basically, they're being smart. They're pre-calculating based on who they know is typically buying health insurance in New York City. And this is a super easy interaction. There's 4 things I need to fill out, and I will get a quote. From there, I can fine-tune it. But this versus 4 pages of this, I mean, it's a world of difference. So those are really the 4 examples I wanted to go through. The next thing was why have product principles. And we've talked about some of these already, but let's go through them. So basically, the first thing, so why have product principles? We think it's the difference between good and great. So the first thing really is we don't require, if you're at a large organization, you're not going to require the CEO to sign off on every single product decision, right? Like, product principles will codify what you're trying to do with the products, and they enable these more autonomous decision making. It also enables consistent decision making between different groups. It helps all product managers say, yes, let's do this, or no, let's not do this. And this is the same thing with the Instagram and the homepage, right? It's like, yes, let's spend more time on the filters. No, let's not work on the homepage. So it clarifies when to say yes and when to say no. This is something we haven't talked about that much yet, but I think a really interesting part of product principles is if you have these product principles that the company believes in, you don't need to rely on A/B testing every single decision in order to get something done, right? Like, you can say, in the case of, let's take an example of Etsy. So at Etsy, one of our mission, our product kind of goals is to emphasize the interaction between the buyer and the seller, right? And make it emphasize the person-to-person experience. That you're not buying on Amazon here; you're actually buying from a real person. You're a real person buying from another real person. So that's a product principle. but something that we have not done to this date is we have not emphasized that people have avatars. And so something like, more than 80% of our users don't have an avatar, which is kind of crazy given that our product principles, like, and our mission is about making this commerce feel human and like person to person, right? But it's hard in a data-driven, like business metrics-driven world. It's hard to make the case for that avatar project because the avatar project is hard to convince people that it moves conversion rate. It moves towards your product goal, but it doesn't move conversion rate. So if you have these strong, it may move conversion rate over the long term, but it's hard to track. So if you have these strong product principles, it's much easier to gain consensus on decisions that hard data can't help you answer. And then I think this is really the last one that's super important and super interesting is when you have strong product principles and everyone on your team and your company knows what those product principles are, you are now thinking in terms of those product goals, and it's easier for you to think in terms of innovation. It's easier for you to think of, your Amazon. I'm now making this up, but say you're Amazon and one of the product principles is to make shipping completely negligible, and I think they really have done that in a lot of ways. You're going to come up with the idea of delivery drones, because you're thinking so much at a product level. You're going to be the one that's first moving in the industry, and you're going to be one that's innovating and leading. Same with Square. They were trying to make these. If you think about how the payments interaction works with Square Wallet, where you can pay without taking out any money, and it just can charge your phone. They're thinking about how do I make this interact. They're thinking about product first, right? They're not thinking about how do we get increased number of transactions to 30% or whatever. They're thinking how do we eliminate receipts? And from there, the world of innovation opens up when you think about product. So I think the really amazing thing about product principles is it helps you expand. It's like a framework for innovation. So those are the big four reasons. The next thing I was going to talk through is, what quality should product principles have? And we've seen some examples. So let's go through this. So the first thing is they have to be easy to remember. So everyone, just like the mission statement, everyone at the company should be able to recite these product principles off by heart. I think usually 3 is a good number, definitely no more than 5, but these are things that everyone should know by heart. They should be written in clear, decisive, direct language. So again, these are things that should help PMs make decisions. These are things that are translating the mission statement into product. And they can't be wishy-washy language. It has to be clear, direct. And this helps you make decisions. I think good product principles play at an emotional level. So they're not only talking about they're thinking about product goals almost as to like Cindy's point. It's almost like, what should you feel? What's the benefit? And what should your users feel as they experience your product? And so with Venmo, it was fun. With Customer.io, it was it give you superpowers, make it hard to make mistakes, kind of relief and feeling powerful. So I think good product principles are product principles that you come up with because you really understand the user at an emotional level. You understand what it is that, for Oscar, it's by making something feel simple and smart, it's like a sense of relief, right? And so good product principles play at some emotional level. And then the other thing is they should be specific to your company. I think that there's a difference between ways that you build, kind of generic ways that you can build good products, you should, iterate quickly and fail fast and all those things, but those aren't specific to whatever mission you're trying to drive towards. And so while those are kind of product development principles, they're not product principles for your company. So I think it's important to keep the idea that, like, what is specific to your company and how you're going to be different from your competitors, and those are your defining product principles. And so then lastly, I wanted to talk about what's happening at Etsy. And so this was, I kind of hinted at this before, but so Etsy is, I don't know if any of you know, but basically Etsy doesn't have a VP of product right now. And so there's a CEO, CTO, CFO, and doesn't have a VP of product, is probably going to, we're obviously looking for that, to hire someone in that position. But it is interesting being a company where there's no VP of product. And so the CEO kind of steps in. CEO has lots of responsibilities, though. And so what the PMs have done, and I've sort of been spearheading this process, but basically there are about 15 PMs that work at Etsy, and we've all worked together to form product principles. And this is a process that, when you're a large company of 500 people, it's hard to do and it takes a while. And so we've been working on this for a few months, for 2 months basically. But I just wanted to share the process that I've gone through with Etsy. So kind of an interesting thing about this is Asana, A-S-A-N-A, they are a task management company. They're awesome, but basically they've went through a similar process as what we're doing at Etsy, and have written a great blog post, and I think they've shared all of their product principles in a Google Doc as well if you're interested. But basically the process that they went through is the same process that we're doing to come up with product principles. So basically, at a big company, I think it does look different if you're a small company. A small company is much easier, but a large company. So what we're doing is first you get to start with the mission, right? So like, what is the mission that we're trying to drive towards? And then second, and this is the process I went through at Etsy, was all the PMs, so basically in a spreadsheet, all the PMs listed out examples of 3 to 5 different times when they face tough decisions, and then kind of generalize that. And so I gotta have a spreadsheet of like 100 examples of tough places, like places where people have tried to make decisions that were tough. And then from there, I've grouped those, right? We grouped them by common themes. So should we care more about buyers or sellers was an example. Like, there's always trade-offs in a two-sided marketplace. There's always trade-offs between the sellers and between one demand side and supply side. And as a product manager, it's really tough to weigh that balance. And like, does the company at a higher level, like, do we have a priority there? Or in which cases do we care about one more than the other? And so basically it was like, okay, if we want to come up with product principles that help us make decisions, we need to understand where are the places that are really difficult, like where we get stuck making decisions. So we listed all those, and then we grouped them, and then from there, as a team, we've articulated point of views for each question, and I'm actually presenting those point of views to the CEO tomorrow morning, and then after that step will be get agreement on those point of views, and then we'll move towards, okay, from those point of views, how can we articulate these into 3 to 5 product principles? And from there, oops, I guess I didn't put it in, sorry. But the last step, I think it was Ifram, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I'm not looking at the Google Hangout. But basically the last step from there is for the roadmap, before 2015 road mapping, to get these product principles in that template that we use to, basically the project proposal template, to have product principles in that template. And so that the projects that we're looking at are looking at it with this lens. Yeah, so that's the process that I'm going through right now. And that's all I wanted to share. So that's my Twitter handle. and happy to answer any questions now too.
Cool. And we do have some questions. So first comes from Max. It's a little bit more of a metaphysical question, abstract question, or maybe very concrete question. So he's asking, what product principle do you think Google Plus is missing that Facebook is not?
Oh, that's really cool. So I think that, so it depends what you okay, so first of all, I don't necessarily agree that they're missing something. I think that Google Plus is trying to be the identity layer for Google services, and it doesn't really matter if people, for them, if people use Google Plus, like the blogging and I don't know whatever they call it, but like the Google Plus homepage, if you use that regularly or not, isn't that important. But if you have a Google Plus identity, really is, because then they can connect your Gmail, your obviously like Hangouts, they can connect your phone if you're an Android user, your calendar, all those things. So yeah, my first reaction is I don't actually think that Google Plus is trying to be exactly Facebook. I think they're trying to be the identity layer, but it's okay if people aren't using it as a social thing because they're trying to connect all the Google services. Yeah. If you have a follow-up question, yeah, let me know.
So let me hand over. I'm going to hand over to Wes, who's got a question for you. Wes?
Yeah. Hey. I was wondering, how much could a company with an existing product portfolio but no product principle sets benefit from creating a set of principles? Are these generally meant for newer companies?
Totally. I mean, that's where I am right now, right? I'm at Etsy, which is like 6 years old, I think. Should look that up. But yeah, I think that you can always benefit because it's giving more clarity to what you're doing in the future, and it's giving more clarity to all the features that you build, like those little decisions of giving you, to give you a really simple example. So on Etsy, there's the listing page, which is just basically the items that you buy. Like when you go to that detailed item view, how much do we show the shop person's face on that page, right? Like if we're emphasizing person-to-person shopping, we should show their face, and they should be at the top. Airbnb, the same thing. Like how much should they emphasize the person-to-person thing? And I think that there's no bad time to introduce product principles into a company. I think obviously it's way harder when the company is more mature, but if you get the right people on your side and do it in a collaborative manner, I don't think there's any bad time. You can always benefit from it.
Cool. And for the next question, I'm going to hand that over to Jessica.
Hey, so I was wondering how you physically came up with product principles in your past jobs. Was it something that you drafted or someone on the team drafted, or did you have like a meeting and facilitate everyone kind of contributing?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been really different from company to company. So at Venmo, it was basically like we had these 3 words on a whiteboard for like 3 months maybe, and we just kept on like staring at the words and like, is that right? Is that not right? Like basically it was very much about like how the early people felt about what they wanted to do. Like fun, we knew fun was there, and then we knew easy was there. But the last one was like we weren't really sure. And so that was kind of a very much a intuition and like kind of almost like more subconscious of like gaining signals from the world and then deciding what it should be. So those kind of 3 things were just up for a while. At Customer I/O, I was the VP of products and we were small, so I could just like come up with them. I basically, a few months in, decided on what they should be and asked the team, and they agreed, and so there wasn't really a lot of a process there. And then at Etsy, it's very much about a process, and we haven't even come up with the product principles yet. We've come up with points of view on hard questions that then we're hoping we can translate into product principles. And this has been about talking to, I've probably talked to 25, maybe 30 people about the product principles at Etsy. So it's very much like it just so depends on the size of the company.
Awesome. And we have a few more questions from Spencer, who likes the off-topic variety, but
Okay.
all product management related. So
Yep.
Here we are throwing you some curveballs. Spencer's got another combo, so I'm going to throw it to you one at a time. How do you think product management is different among small startup companies, mid-size, and large-size businesses? So we'll start with that question first.
Yeah. So I think it also differs between young and mature. I'm assuming small also means young. And at a small company, I think everyone really knows and believes, like deeply knows and believes in the product vision. They've been there since the start. They've probably heard the co-founders like talk about it incessantly. It's very much like there's not work to do to get people up to speed as much. And then at a large company, I feel like it's very much about communication. And I think there's a difference between large companies where the co-founders have left and the large companies where the co-founders remain. When the co-founders leave, or the founders, when the founders leave, I think it's kind of always hard to recover that product vision. Not saying it can't be done in any way, but I think that there's also a difference not just between large companies, but like, you know, Amazon with Jeff Bezos still there and still very much having a strong product vision is different probably from a place where the founders have left and there's work kind of to be done to have that product vision. I'd say like everything just gets harder at a large company, right? It's harder to move fast. It's harder to translate strategic things like this across all levels. But it's also really, really important to have it. It's almost like it's more important at a larger company because of like getting at some of the benefits before, but because people are in all these kind of disparate groups, like making sure people make consistent decisions, it's even more important to have this like communication. And actually, if you read that Asana blog post, that was their rationale for coming up with product principles, was their team had reached a certain stage at which they just didn't have faith that everyone was thinking about the product the same way. And so this is why they came up with product principles.
Cool. And Spencer's second part of that question is he's asking what you think of the differences between the product management role at a product-oriented business versus a tech-enabled services business.
At a product versus a tech-enabled service.
I'm going to reinterpret it. I'm hoping that I'm reinterpreting Spencer's question correctly. So I think what Spencer is asking is, how does the role of product vary between a product-centric company versus a tech-centric company?
By tech-centric, you mean literally like engineering-centric?
That's how I'm interpreting it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it depends. By centric, okay, so we could mean like where the product is literally like Amazon Web Services, where the product is very like a technical product, or where it's a company that has like a product with like real consumers who aren't technical, but the makeup of the company is more tech-based. That was probably confusing. I would say, I guess it depends what type of, are you saying that the product is more technical or that the people who work at the company are more like engineering inclined?
I'm interpreting his question. Again, I'm doing my best, Spencer, to interpret that one. I'm interpreting Spencer's question not so much whether it's a technical or non-technical product,
Okay.
but where I guess more where the power base of the company is, more on the product side.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to the question about like business, more like business metric led companies, and you know it's harder to make a case for product principles there, and it's more work. but I definitely think it can be done. It's just about building consensus. And there's definitely going to be differences in engineering-led companies. A lot of the decisions might be based on A/B testing. Like every decision might have to go through an A/B test. It might be a place where engineers actually have more decision-making power rather than product managers. That's all just like speculating, but yeah, I think it's always harder when there's not a strong product leadership, when there's not strong product at the leadership level.
Okay. Cool. And this last one's not a question. It's more of a shout out from someone. So apparently there's someone named Joan who will be joining your organization on the seller experience team in the near future.
Cool.
They'll be starting in late May, and they just wanted to say hello. So I'm passing that on from Joan to you. So remember to say hi to Joan. And yes, Joan, I did give the shout out. So there you go.
I think I know what she's working on. Onboarding. Okay. Yeah, cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm going to wrap up at this point. So that kind of exhausts all the questions we've got. And we've had a lot of great questions, a lot of great participation in the room and elsewhere. So really thanks, everyone. And as always, this presentation will be posted on our SlideShare channel, too. And again, thank you to Asha Gupta, Product Manager at Etsy, for today's discussion in Product Principles. Big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy. And also, again, to everyone else who joined us from the wider internet today to join us for this Product Mentor Talk. And also, don't forget, if you want to be a mentor like Asha, like a lot of the other people in the room, a lot of other people joining us, and we're looking for product people of all sorts, to help product people of all sorts, please visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. And also, if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, come and visit our free for everyone, theproductjobs.com. It's all about connecting great product jobs with great product people. And again, thank you, everybody. Bye.